By late 1862, during the Civil War, Abraham and Mary Lincoln, like many Americans, had seen much suffering and death. Some terrible battles had been fought where thousands had been killed and wounded. Lincoln's son Willie had died of typhoid fever in the White House earlier that year. Both Abraham and Mary were hit very hard by their son's death. Mary especially had a hard time coping, and Abraham really worried about her. After several months, though, she seemed to be getting better, and she said that she wanted to go visit some of the wounded soldiers at the Patent Office building. It was one of the grandest buildings in Washington, and it had been turned into a military hospital. This is how I tell the story in Old Abe. The next Sunday afternoon, they rode the few blocks to the Patent Office, climbed its granite stairs, and passed between its huge Greek columns. The building had been converted into a giant infirmary. The rows of sick and injured lay between the display cases. Volunteer nurses moved among the cots, wiping brows. Evergreen wreaths had been hung on pillars, and festoons stretched overhead to cheer the men for the Christmas season. "Isn't that thoughtful?" Mary said as they entered. Her voice was trembling. Abraham took her hand. She was still dressed in mourning for Willie, and he could feel her shrinking within the layers of black. The stench of the place was terrible. A nurse gave them each a piece of cloth sprinkled with lavender water to hold it to their noses. Most of the patients lay immobile on their cots. A few sat in chairs or on the floor, backs propped up against a wall. Mary stared numbly at all the white bandaged stumps where arms and legs ought to be. The doctor on duty, a short, harried-looking man with dried blood on his sleeves, led them along the rows of beds. "This fellow here was shot with a minie-ball through both ankles," he explained in a clinical tone. "We'll most likely have to take both his feet. This one had a shot pass through his left lung and out his back. I don't know how he's managing it, but it looks as though he may recover. This one here had his spine severed." The last man gave a soft moan. Occasionally someone let out a shriek of pain or cried, "Oh God, help me." The throats of unconscious men rattled for air. A man delirious from morphine, or perhaps gone insane, mumbled as he counted his fingers over and over. "We have a good many cases of dysentery," the doctor said. "Some of these boys have severe frostbite. They lay on the battlefield at Fredericksburg for days and nights before anyone could get to them. And some got badly burned in grass set afire by cannon." One poor lad lay perfectly still with bandages wrapped around most of his head. His eyes were both shot out. A nurse bathed his arms with cool water, and when she was done, he politely said, "Thank you." On a bed next to him lay a figure covered from head to foot with a blanket, waiting for the stretcher bearers to come take it away. Abraham began moving from bed to bed, shaking hands with men who could, asking questions about where they were from and how long they had been in the army, offering words of encouragement. "You must live, my boy," he told a youngster who was coughing blood into a handkerchief. "You must live." "I intend to, sir," he said. A man with no apparent injuries lay on his back, staring morosely at the ceiling. "These doctors kill more men than they cure," he sighed. "They may as well leave us all alone to die." Nearby lay a man guffawing over a piece of paper. "A nice lady came by and gave me this tract on the sin of dancing," he grinned. "And looky here, both my legs are shot off." Mary had been staying close, saying nothing. There was a boy, wasted and pale, lying curled up on his bed, looking at them with large brown eyes. He could not have been more than 18 or 19, about the same age as their own Bob. The flesh on his face had drawn tight against his skull. Mary moved to his bedside. "What happened to you, dear boy?" she asked gently. "I got hit in the gut, ma'am," he said weakly. "Does it hurt much?" "Yes, ma'am, it does, mostly when I try to eat. I can't hold anything down." She nodded, started to move away, hesitated. "Is there anything I can do for you?" she asked. "You might help me write a letter to my mother." "Of course." Abraham brought a chair, and then she sat by the boy's side writing as he dictated. "Dear Mother, I have been shot bad, but I'm bearing up. I tried to do my duty. The doctor says I cannot recover. God bless you and Father. Kiss Rachel and Benjamin for me. We will see each other again in a better place. Your loving son, Jacob." Getting out the few words exhausted him. Mary folded the paper and promised that it would be mailed. "Is there anything else I might do for you?" she asked. I guess you might hold my hand and see me through until I can fall asleep." She took his hand while he closed his eyes. Abraham touched her lightly on the shoulder. She looked up at him, smiling sadly. "I'll stay," she whispered. "You go on. When you get home, send the carriage back for me." He left her there, sitting quietly among the wounded and the dying. Mary made many trips to hospitals to visit wounded soldiers, but she never let the press know. Mary was often maligned in the press. Many newspapers wrote ugly things about her. She could have taken reporters along with her, and they probably would have written nice stories about those hospital visits. But she made them without publicity. I think she found comfort in visiting the wounded and felt like it was a way for her to do genuine good. She wanted to do it quietly, without credit. And that, I think, is one of the most wonderful acts of compassion of any First Lady in our nation's history. I'm John Cribb, and I hope you'll read my novel, Old Abe. I hope it brings Lincoln to life for you, and I hope it helps you love Lincoln as much as I do.